Imagine you walk into like a really tense boardroom right now, and you tell your team, I insist that he is present.
Right. Okay.
Technically, you'd just be making a historical observation about the past.
Exactly. You're just stating a fact.
But if you drop like one single letter and say, I insist that he be present, suddenly you are issuing this formal, undeniable command.
Yeah, it's a massive shift in power just from that tiny change.
Right. And today, on the deep dive, we are looking at a stack of sources that reveal exactly why these tiny grammatical shifts, I mean, sometimes it really is just a single missing letter, serve as like the ultimate secret code to projecting power, fluency, and absolute precision.
It really is a profound shift in perspective. Too often people look at a traditional grammar textbook and they just see, well, they see an instruction manual full of binary rules.
Oh, totally. Just arbitrary penalties, right? Like, don't do this, don't do that.
Exactly. But when you strip away the heavy terminology, what you're actually left with is an incredibly potent psychological toolkit. I mean, you are learning how to manipulate a living, breathing thought.
Yeah.
And you force it to land exactly the way you want in the listener's mind.
And that is exactly our mission today. So welcome to a brand new deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Now, I know what you listening might be thinking. You're probably like, wait, an English class?
Right, like we're back in middle school.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But stick with us. Because whether you are a complete beginner trying to grasp the basics or, a seasoned professional looking to refine your corporate communications, we are extracting just the essential building blocks today.
Just the essentials, no fluff.
Right. We're going to look at how to weaponize basic sentence types, how to smoothly bridge complex ideas together without sounding like a robot, and finally, how to use that hidden, almost invisible mood in English we just mentioned to instantly elevate your professional presence.
Which means we really need to start right at the foundation.
Okay, let's do it.
Before you can build these complex, beautiful bridges between your ideas, you have to understand the literal land masses you are trying to connect.
The sentences themselves.
Exactly. In language, that base unit is the sentence. Now, we all know that a sentence needs a subject doing an action and an object receiving it, like, she wrote a letter.
Right, basic stuff.
But what the sources point out is how manipulating the flavor of that basic relationship completely alters the power dynamic in a room.
Oh, absolutely. The sources break down these complete thoughts into 4 distinct types. And I love, like, looking at them through the lens of intent. So first you have declarative sentences. These are your everyday statements of fact, like the sun is shining or we need to increase shales.
Right, you're just laying down the concrete.
Exactly. When you use a declarative sentence, you are anchoring the listener in your reality.
Then you contrast that with interrogative sentences, questions, right? Like, what time is it? Or
No.
are you coming with us? From a communication standpoint, an interrogative sentence shifts the cognitive burden entirely onto the person you're speaking to.
Oh, that's a great way to put it. You're demanding a response.
Right, usually kicking off with who, what, when, where, why, or how. You're making them do the work.
Which brings us to the third type, imperative sentences. These are your commands or requests. And they can be masked as friendly, like, please sit down.
Or they can be super firm.
Yeah, like close the door. Either way, you are actively directing someone's physical or mental behavior. And then finally, we have exclamatory sentences, which are purely for expressing strong emotion.
Like, what a beautiful sunset.
Exactly. These inject emotional weight into an otherwise sterile conversation.
They really do.
Okay, but let's unpack this for a second, because knowing these 4 types is great, but, I mean, are you saying we should actively be thinking about whether we're using an interrogative or an imperative in the middle of a casual chat?
Well, no, not consciously.
Doesn't that just happen completely naturally for most people?
It happens naturally for fluent speakers, yeah. But there is a massive difference between being just fluent and being a highly persuasive communicator.
Oh, okay.
What's fascinating here is how the best speakers actively mix these structures to avoid sounding robotic.
Right, because if you don't...
If you speak entirely in isolated declarative sentences like, the sun is shining, I am happy, I will go outside, you sound incredibly choppy.
Yeah, it's super jarring. It sounds like a first-grade reading book.
Exactly. So to create a persuasive flow, you have to introduce conjunctions. These are the bridges that link your words, your phrases, and those basic sentences together.
Right. And there are different types of bridges depending on the cognitive load you want to balance.
Yes.
The first type is the coordinating conjunction. For you listening, these are the very common everyday words like and, but, or, so. They join two equal parts of a sentence.
Right.
I actually like to think of coordinating conjunctions like a balance scale. Whatever you put on one side, you have to match the grammatical weight on the other side.
That's a really accurate way to visualize it. Both sides must be able to stand on their own.
So if I say, I like tea and coffee, both are equal nouns balancing on the scale. Or if I want to connect two full ideas, she's tired, but she's still working. You have two complete independent thoughts perfectly balanced on either side of that, but it feels very stable.
It does feel stable. But then we introduce subordinating conjunctions, and the entire dynamic completely changes.
Oh, yeah. This is where it gets interesting.
Right. These are words like because, although, if, while, until. And instead of balancing two equal weights, these conjunctions force one part of the sentence to become entirely dependent on the other.
Yeah, so if coordinating conjunctions are a balance scale, I think subordinating conjunctions are like a truck towing a trailer down the highway.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Right. The independent clause is the truck. It has a massive engine. It can drive all by itself, like, I stayed home.
Yeah.
That's a complete, powerful thought. But the dependent clause is the trailer, because it was raining. If you just leave the phrase because it was raining on the highway by itself, it goes absolutely nowhere.
It's just stranded.
Exactly. It relies entirely on the main engine to move forward. I stayed home because it was raining.
And from a psychological standpoint, using subordinating conjunctions allows you to create suspense?
Oh, wait, how so?
Well, if you put the trailer first, because it was raining, the listener's brain is literally suspended in midair, right?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
They're waiting for the truck to arrive to pull the meaning forward. I stayed home. It's a brilliant way to hold an audience's attention.
That is so true.
And native speakers take this structural expectation even further with correlative conjunctions.
Wait, correlative conjunctions, so you mean those pairs like not only and, but also?
Most exact ones, yeah.
See, I always thought those just made sentences needlessly long and wordy. Are you saying they actually serve a functional purpose?
They absolutely do. Correlative conjunctions like either or not only, but also, they essentially hijack the listener's brain by setting a trap of structural expectation.
A trap.
Yeah. Take the sentence. She is not only smart, but also very kind. The absolute split second you utter the words, not only, the listener's subconscious is primed. They are waiting for the, but also to drop.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
It creates this wonderful sense of rhythm and musicality. It proves to the listener that you know exactly where your sentence is going before you even finish it, which just makes your language feel incredibly intentional and polished.
It's like dropping a musical beat in the conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have our basic bridges built. We understand our balance scales, our trucks and trailers, and our rhythmic pairs.
Yes.
But how do we actually deploy these out in the wild? Like, how do we navigate a real, flowing conversation where ideas are constantly shifting?
Well, that requires us to transition from thinking about raw syntax, the sheer mechanics of the grammar, to thinking about practical meaning. We use specific categories of connectors to signal to the listener exactly where our logic is heading. Without them, you cannot express a nuanced argument. You can only state isolated facts.
Okay, let's start with time connectors. If you're recounting an event, you need to sequence the actions. You can't just throw data points out randomly.
Right. It would be a mess.
Right. So we use connectors like at first, afterwards, meanwhile, or as soon as, for example. First I was nervous. Afterwards I felt more confident.
Exactly.
It creates this clear, linear timeline for the listener's brain to follow, so they don't have to work hard to piece the story together.
Precisely. And then you have the connectors of cause and reason. This is how you construct an argument by explaining the why behind an action.
The motivation.
Right. We rely on connectors like because, so, therefore, and consequently.
Yeah.
Saying he wore a hat because it was sunny instantly links an action to its motivation. But notice the shift in formality there. Because is everyday conversation. But if you say it was sunny, therefore he wore a hat, you've elevated the logic. It sounds like a deduction rather than just an excuse.
Totally. And then there's contrast or opposition, which is honestly where a lot of the drama and friction in language happens.
No, absolutely.
This is when you introduce a contradiction
Yeah.
using words like however, whereas, although, and despite.
Yes, but the sources highlight a very strict structural rule here that fundamentally changes how the brain processes the contradiction.
Oh, right.
It has to do with the difference between even though and despite.
Right, because they mean the exact same thing, but they demand totally different grammar. Like,
Yep.
if you use even though, you must follow it with a full subject and a verb.
Yes.
Like, even though he studied hard, he failed. You have he as the subject, studied as the verb. It forces the listener to process a full mini-story with an action before they get to the twist.
Exactly. But if you want to use despite or in spite of to convey that exact same contradiction, you cannot use a full subject and verb clause.
Oh, right.
You have to use just a noun phrase or a gerund, a verb ending in ing. So you cannot legally say, despite he studied hard.
Right. That sounds so wrong.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. You have to bypass the action entirely and say, despite being tired, I kept working. Or simply drop a heavy noun on them. Despite the cold, she wore a dress.
Despite the cold.
Yeah.
Just a noun. When you use despite, you bypass the action and just drop a heavy concept on them.
It's faster.
It's way faster, it's punchier, and it completely shifts the emotional weight of the sentence. That is such a crucial mechanism for you listening to internalize, even though it gives the listener the full action to digest, well, despite just hits them with the raw element.
Perfectly said.
But let me push back on something here. We just listed a ton of categories: time, cause, contrast, and we haven't even touched on emphasis words like indeed or exemplifications like such as, does someone really need to sit down with a stack of flashcards and memorize all these categories?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it's not about rote memorization at all. It's about recognizing the functional utility of these connectors.
Okay.
Think about what happens when you are driving a car. You don't memorize the chemical makeup of the paint on a traffic light, right?
That's totally not.
You just intuitively react to the signals.
Yes, I love that. I actually like to think of these connectors as literal traffic signals for the listener's brain.
Exactly.
Like when you use an addition connector, like furthermore or moreover, you are giving the listener a bright green light. You're telling them, keep cruising at the exact same speed, more of the same type of information is coming your way.
Right.
But when you drop a contrast word like however or nevertheless, you are flashing a yellow yield sign. You are warning them, slow down, pump the brakes. There's a sudden twist in the logic approaching.
That is a brilliant way to visualize the cognitive load. You are basically directing the traffic of your own ideas. And when you master those traffic signals, you eliminate the friction for the listener. And eliminating that friction is what actually creates the feeling of fluency for whoever's listening to you.
They don't even have to think about it.
Exactly. They don't know why they understand you so clearly. They just know that following your argument is effortless.
All right, so we've got our everyday traffic flowing smoothly. We can state basic facts. We can link them with balance scales. We can show contrast with our yellow lights.
Yep.
But here's where we take a massive leap. Here's where it gets really interesting. What happens when you need to step out of casual conversation and be highly formal, incredibly precise, or issue a strict demand in a professional setting?
This brings us to a part of English that operates almost like a secret club.
Yes. We are talking about moving from the indicative mood to the subjunctive mood. And it is a fascinating, almost archaic shift in how we formulate reality.
It really is.
Honestly, just the name sounds intimidating. The subjunctive mood. Let's break down what a mood even is in this context.
Yeah.
Everything we've talked about so far, stating facts, asking questions, linking events, that's all the indicative mood.
Right.
It indicates reality. It deals with facts. He is here. She works hard. Facts. So what does the subjunctive do differently?
Well, the subjunctive deals entirely with things that are not statements of fact. It operates strictly in the realm of the hypothetical.
Okay.
It is the grammatical gear we use to express wishes, demands, strong recommendations, and things that we are imagining rather than observing.
Using the subjunctive is kind of like shifting a manual car into a highly specialized gear. You don't need it to cruise down the highway. The indicative mood does that just fine. But the moment you need to haul heavy professional demands up a steep hill, you need a different kind of torque.
That's a great analogy.
And the weirdest part is that you probably use it without even realizing it, because it survives in these old, fixed expressions. Think about the phrase, God save the queen, or long live the king, or heaven forbid. If you look closely at the grammar there, it blatantly violates standard rules.
It does. Normally, in the present tense third-person singular, we are taught to add an "es" to the verb. We say he saves, she lives, the dog runs.
Right.
But in those fixed expressions, we drop the "es." We use the raw base form of the verb, God save the queen, not saves. That missing "es" is the hallmark of the subjunctive mood.
Okay, but let's be real. We aren't walking around saying heaven forbid in our daily marketing meetings or writing long live the CEO in our Slack channels.
Hopefully not.
Where does this actually show up for us in the modern professional world?
Well, it shows up explicitly after certain verbs that express a demand, an insistence, or a suggestion. Verbs like recommend, insist, suggest, or demand.
Okay.
It also shows up after adjectives of importance, like essential, crucial, or vital. When you use one of those trigger words, the clause that follows it is supposed to shift into the subjunctive.
And it genuinely sounds like you are making a grammatical error if you aren't used to it. Give us an example using one of those adjectives of importance.
Sure, let's use the adjective essential. Normally you would say, everyone is on time. But if you trigger it with the adjective, you don't say, it is essential that everyone is on time.
Right.
To use the subjunctive properly, you revert to the base verb be. You say, it is essential that everyone be on time.
That everyone be on time. Wow, it sounds so incredibly formal and authoritative. Or how about with a demand? Like, they demanded that the problem be solved, not is solved.
Exactly. Let's look at a regular verb to see how we drop the "es." I recommend that he take a break, not takes. She insisted that he register immediately, not registers.
It honestly feels like breaking a rule. My brain desperately wants to put the "es" on the end of take and register because my entire life I've been told he takes and he registers.
And that psychological discomfort is exactly why it stands out when you use it correctly. It signals a very high level of grammatical control in education.
There was an example in our sources that absolutely blew my mind because it perfectly illustrates why mastering this mechanism matters. It's about the verb insist.
Oh, yeah.
You can actually use both moods with this exact same verb, but the power dynamic completely changes depending on whether you use the indicative or the subjunctive.
Yes, this is the ultimate test of precision. Listen closely to these two sentences, all right? Sentence 1, she insisted that he be present. Sentence 2, she insisted that he was present.
Oh, okay, let's break that down. She insisted that he be present, that is the subjunctive. She is issuing a directive. She is making a demand about an unrealized future. I demand your presence.
Exactly. It's a command.
Right.
But she insisted that he was present. That is the indicative mood. She is stating a factual observation about the past. Imagine they are in a court of law, and she is arguing with the judge, insisting that, as a matter of historical fact, he was standing in the room.
Right. One is a command to shape the future, and the other is an observation about reality. And the only difference between those two massive concepts is the choice between be and was.
It's pretty amazing.
That is staggering precision. Oh, and we can't forget the past subjunctive, because this is the one that trips up absolutely everyone, even native speakers.
Ah, yes. The famous were. In the past subjunctive, when we were talking about unreal or completely hypothetical situations, we use were for all subjects, even the ones that normally take was.
Right. So normally, stating a fact, I say, I was at the store. But if I am dreaming about winning the lottery, an unreal hypothetical, I don't say, if I was rich.
No.
I have to say, if I were rich, I would travel.
Oh.
Or I wish it were summer right now.
And think about why that is.
Yeah.
Using were physically distances the statement from reality. It is a grammatical cue that tells the listener, do not take what I'm about to say as a fact. We are playing make-believe.
But this raises an important question, though. Because as the sources point out, the subjunctive sounds a bit strange and archaic to the modern ear.
It does.
In everyday casual English, the subjunctive is actually fading away. Many native speakers today will just use the indicative. They'll say, it is important that he registers today, throwing the "es" back on because it requires less mental friction.
That's true.
So why should you, the listener, bother learning to drive the "es"? Why use the clunky gear shift if everyone else is just driving an automatic?
No, because context and perception are everything. While the indicative is perfectly fine for a casual chat over coffee, using the strict subjunctive saying, I recommend that he take a break, or it is vital that she be informed, is an incredibly powerful tool in a professional setting.
Right.
It is the verbal equivalent of wearing a bespoke, tailored suit to a pitch meeting while everyone else is in t-shirts. It projects authority, rigorous education, and an uncompromising standard of precision.
Okay, so what does this all mean? Let's pull all of these threads together. We started today looking at a grammar stack that felt like an overwhelming list of arbitrary rules. But what we found instead is a masterclass in human psychology and cognitive load. We looked beyond just memorizing subjects and objects and saw how declarative statements anchor reality, while interrogative sentences shift the mental burden onto your listener.
Then we learned how to build architectural bridges with conjunctions. We saw how coordinating conjunctions create a comforting balance, while subordinating conjunctions build suspense by making one idea rely entirely on another.
Yeah.
We learned to use connectors not as vocabulary words, but as cognitive traffic signals giving green lights to accelerate our logic and yellow lights to warn of a sudden twist.
And preventing our speech from sounding robotic.
Exactly.
And finally, we leveled up to the subjunctive mood. We learned that by making tiny, almost invisible mechanical changes, like dropping an "as" or using the raw word "be," we can shift our language from merely observing reality to actively commanding it.
It's all about taking absolute, uncompromising control over how your thoughts and your authority are perceived by the person sitting across from you.
Which leaves us with a rather fascinating paradox to ponder. We discussed how grammar rules are essentially mechanisms of social hierarchy and control.
Yes.
The subjunctive mood forces the listener to recognize a formal demand. Yet, our sources note that the subjunctive is fading from casual use, surviving mostly in high-level professional environments as a signal of elite education.
Right. It's basically a gatekeeping tool.
Exactly.
So the final thought to consider is this. As modern corporate culture shifts away from rigid, top-down hierarchies toward flat, casual, and egalitarian workspaces, will the grammar follow suit?
Oh, wow.
If you use the strict subjunctive in a modern startup to say, "I demand that he be fired," will you sound professional or will you sound archaic, domineering, and socially out of touch?
That's a great point.
As our social structures flatten, we might actually reach a point where being too grammatically precise becomes a liability rather than a strength.
Wow. Does grammar dictate how we perceive the workplace, or does the changing workplace eventually dictate our grammar? That is a brilliant question to end on.
It really makes you think.
It brings us right back to our opening thought. Grammar isn't just a dusty rule book. It is the invisible code that structures our reality. You are writing that code every single time you open your mouth. You just have to decide whether you want to rely on the default settings or if you want to take the manual controls and see how much power you really have.